have 4 candidates. The top 2 candidates, the top 2 vote getters, will go on to the general election that will be in November. And then you will vote for 1 candidate then. So you will vote for 1 candidate now. The top 2 will go on to the general election, and 1 candidate will end up as our Board of Education at-large representative. So first, I would like to introduce you to each candidate, and then we'll go over the format. So sitting first, and the order was chosen by picking names out of a hat, and they all got their own names, of course. So we did very well that way. Anyway, Mary Eisner Heidern will be your first candidate that you will hear from. Then we have Jill Ortman-Fouse, then Shebra Evans, and last but not least, Edward Amatetti. So we welcome you all and thank you for coming. The format tonight will be each candidate will have a 2-minute introduction. Then we will have 3 questions that we have already selected as sponsors, AAUW and the League of Women Voters, to get us going. You also have cards that have been passed out. If there are questions from the audience, we have Mary Lanigan walking around. Put your question on a card, and we will give them to 2 screeners up here. And the main reason we have screeners is because many of you have the same question and concerns. So instead of having the same question over and over again, we'll try to condense it so we can get as many topics in as possible. Okay? At that point, after that, each candidate will have a 1-minute closing statement. So I think we are ready to begin. Mary Eisner Heidern, would you like to start for us?
Good evening. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and AAUW for hosting this forum, and all of you for coming out tonight. My name is Mary Eisner Heidern, and I'm the mom of 2 Churchill 10th graders. I've been an education advocate in this county, serving several organizations at the local, county, and state and federal level. I also worked as a legislative aide in Annapolis for 3 years, providing constituent services to the wonderful members of Districts 39 and 19. I'm running for the Board of Education because I've always had questions about what my children were experiencing in MCPS, and I thought if a Churchill parent had questions, then everybody probably has questions. Some of my questions include, how are we doing on implementing the Common Core? And where are our metrics? And if we're failing, what are we doing about it? Along those lines, the General Assembly passed a study to look at what we're going to do in advance of PARCC. That's the new test. And if we're not ready to take the test, what are we going to do instead of PARCC? Along the same lines, Dr. Starr came out with the bell times recommendation. He mixed that up with the idea of adding 30 minutes to the elementary school day. Why couldn't those 2 proposals stand on their own? Or was the massive stakeholder process so hard for him that he had to combine those 2? I have more questions. Why be limited to the word appropriate in the free appropriate publication language that supports our ever-increasing special needs population? Why so little budget and spending transparency? What are we doing to make our staff demographics look more like our student demographics? I want answers to these questions. In fact, I can't imagine that we all don't get answers to these questions. So regardless of the outcome on June 24th, if you would like to come with me to get answers to these questions, my number is 240-401-7399. Call me and we'll get them together. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Jill Ortman-Fouse will be our next speaker.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for holding this tonight. My family has lived in Montgomery County for the past 20 years. My son Nathan is in 7th grade and my daughter Sienna is in 9th grade, and they've grown up in the Montgomery County public school system. For the last 30 years, I've tried to do whatever I can to make a difference. I used my degree in media communications from UNC Chapel Hill to produce documentaries on issues like illiteracy, teen pregnancy, poverty, and homelessness. I spent a year as a volunteer with Habitat for Humanity International and built homes in Central America and in the United States. And I did environmental justice, lobbying, policy, and education. When my kids started their education in MCPS, I turned my advocacy efforts to our schools. And I had a number of positions with our school system, including 2 terms as PTA president. I was appointed to MCPS's Parent Advisory Council. I'm delegate for the Montgomery County Council of PTAs. I've spent 6 years on the instructional improvement team of our local school, and I've led a number of committees. And I've led advocacy efforts for our schools at the elementary, middle, and high school level, and those issues are what has driven me to want to be on the Board of Education. I've fought for better school facilities, for increased resource staff, bilingual educators, and keeping our electives like arts and music in our schools. I believe that we need to do whatever we can, wherever we can, to make a difference for our kids and our community, and that's why I've served on the board of our YMCA for the last 4 years and 2 terms as Neighborhood Association President. My priorities for the Board of Education are: I want to attack the achievement gap, I want to work for a responsive, collaborative, and transparent and accountable school system, and I support a whole child approach to learning. I believe those are the reasons that county council members and other elected officials like George Leventhal and Mark Elrich and State Senator Jamie Raskin are supporting my campaign, and I hope you will too. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Shebra Evans is our next speaker.
Good evening, and I too want to thank the Women League of Voters as well as AAUW for holding this candidates forum tonight, and thank each of you for coming out in support of this forum. My name is Shebra Evans, as was stated, and my husband and I, we have 2 daughters in elementary school here in the Wheaton cluster, and they attend Harmony Hills Elementary School. So my initial involvement, it began strictly just to support our daughters and with the intent to lighten the load of our teachers. And over the past 6 years, I have been that change that I want to see by advocating at the local school level, then going on to advocate for the Wheaton cluster for our 9 schools, and then going on to the county level and working with the Montgomery County Council of PTAs at the level, at the executive leadership level for 3 consecutive years. What I want to say is that the people that I've encountered, they are normally, some are like me in terms of they know the education process, and then some are not like me where they don't know which direction to go. And so what I want to say to you, most people are silent. And today what I want to tell you, none of us have the right to remain silent, not when it comes to education. It is very important that we all take part. I want to work to engage, educate, and excel. Engage our community, educate our students, and excel our school systems so all of our children have an equal and fair opportunity to work to get a quality education. My recent endorsements show the diversity in which I've worked with the constituents throughout the Montgomery County PTA, and I'm very honored to be endorsed by MCEA, by CAP, that is the Coalition of Asian Pacific Americans Democrats of Maryland, that's SEIU Local 500, CASA in Action, and the African American Democratic Club. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final opening statement will be from candidate Edward Amatetti.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming. And thank you guys at the League of Women's Voters for having this, because often the Board of Education seems to be forgotten. And it's a shame because it's more than half the county budget, and it's where the government touches the lives of our children most. So it's very important, and I'm so glad you're having us here. I'm going to come with, as a candidate and on the board, from a different perspective and a kind of a different skill set. I'm been for many years a businessman, and for 10 of those I was an operations auditor for governments, including Cleveland, the city of Cleveland, the city of Providence, Boynton Beach, Contra Costa County, and I would do operations audits and operations improvements. They would hire me and my firm to do that. Then, so I'm going to be in a position to bring some order to the budget, which lacks transparency and has lots of problems. It's really unanalyzable from an outside person, and I can bring that together and lead the board and making them become more involved there. Secondly, I was a classroom teacher for 7 years in Montgomery County, Prince George's, and Washington, D.C., and I had consistently high performance in my class in very diverse classes, which included schools that were 99% African American, another class that had 18 people from El Salvador. In other words, I did close the achievement gap, and so did other teachers. And none of these teachers would look at these top-down programs that you keep reading about in the paper as the reason for them doing it. And that is my #1 priority, to do that. And it wasn't easy. I just want to very quickly say my first year was so difficult that I had to get in the car and drive around and get out of the place until I could gather myself. Then, for the summer, I taught myself classroom management, combine that with high expectations, and combine that with hard work, and I want to talk about that because that's where all the improvement is going to come. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Our first question goes to Jill Ortman-Fouse, and we'll start with a fairly easy one that's in the news constantly, and that is the core curriculum. How do you feel about the core curriculum? What is your philosophy in carrying it through?
In 90 seconds, right?
In 90 seconds or
Okay.
less.
All right, so for people who aren't familiar with the core curriculum, it was agreed to by governors across the country as a way for all of our kids to be expected to hit the same standards no matter what state you were in, which makes sense when kids are traveling. We have a highly mobile population from state to state. It also wanted to build standards for the 21st century of learning. So it wanted children to be able to do complex thinking and analysis and to look at problems in a comprehensive way and to be able to use literacy skills in other content areas. The problem was that the curriculum was not ready when we decided to go ahead and use it, and Maryland was one of the early adopters. Our problems that we've had in Maryland are not unique. They've been across the country, and in fact 4 states have opted out of the Common Core. Our teachers are unprepared. They don't have the curriculum in place that they need. And it is very frustrating. They've been out for a while. Our kindergartners are now in 4th grade who have been using the curriculum. Our 5th graders, it just got dropped into their laps this year. And it's like aliens visiting a foreign land because there's a new vocabulary and a new way of doing things. The thing that you won't want to do with your teachers is frustrate them and kill their morale. And the rollout for this curriculum has been highly difficult on the teachers, and they don't have the planning time they need to be able to make it happen. Now, hopefully you know what you need to know when they answer these questions. That's the basics.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Evans?
Yes. So, Common Core curriculum. With this curriculum, we are going deeper and we are going broader, and we do want our kids to be critical thinkers, to be able to be prepared for the 21st century. And although the timing was not good, what we are hearing from our teachers that they love the fact that our students are going to be able to go deeper with the knowledge. And in the future, I think it would make it easier on our teachers if a lot of things aren't taking place at the same time, in terms of having a new curriculum as well as having different assessments that are going to come down. So when we hear from the teachers, when I'm talking with the community and speaking with the teachers, they are happy that we're going deeper, that it will be broader information, just not happy about the timing of having a new curriculum as well as having to do new assessments that will go completely to the computer technology. So that's what I want to say.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Amatetti?
Thank you. Common Core is going to have a huge impact on our schools in terms of money, in terms of diversion from what teachers and administrators need to be doing every day, and in terms of the toll of the staff at schools. Taking it back from that, what is it going to accomplish? it's not going to address any of the problems in the schools. And if you got 100 teachers together 4 years ago and said, can we solve some of the problems with the schools with a new curriculum, 0 of them would say that, especially the ones that are most effective in the classroom. So it is not going to help. In Montgomery County, it's especially a problem is that it will reduce the rigor. In many areas, it'll push Algebra 1 to 9th grade. We're already pushing it up to 8th grade. It's going to put us between 1 and 2 years behind the world proficiency benchmarks in various things, whether it's decimals or plus and minus or algebra, the high things. It's going to lower the rigor. It's also going to take control again away from the parents, the teachers, the administrators, and give it higher up to people who, again, don't know the local situation in Montgomery County. And I have a lot of other things I could say about it, but it will not be the panacea we think it is.
Thank you. Ms. Eisner Heidorn?
Okay, I'm going to disagree with Ed and thank Jill profusely for her explanation. I don't think I actually need the mic. Let me know if you can't hear me. Jill did a wonderful explanation of the Common Core. This is a brief reminder that I was in the math work group in 2009 when we first started talking about it, and pretty much there wasn't a single parent, teacher, administrator, counselor, curriculum writer who didn't agree that we didn't need a huge sea change in our math curriculum, at least, prior to the introduction of the Common Core. Ed is correct in saying that the curriculum itself is not a panacea for some of the issues we are having in our schools. Curriculum will only do so much to address things like the gap, but it will go a long way as it's being implemented currently in Montgomery County if our teachers get the training time, the support, and the attention they need to correctly implement it, if we get the stakeholder input from everyone in the community to really do it right, if we have the time to really get the tests right. Because Montgomery County isn't implementing the Common Core, we're implementing our version, which is more rigorous, which is better, which goes deeper, which really can get our kids college and career ready for 21st century jobs.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And just to reaffirm the mic, because we're being taped, you will need the microphones. That's okay. All right. It takes money to run a school district. This year, the Montgomery County Board of Education requested $2.32 billion operating budget. But in order to do this, they had to pull from the Healthcare Trust Fund. This can't be done every year. How do you feel about that, and how would you continue to fund the needs of Montgomery County Public Schools? And at this point, I think Shebra is our first.
Great. I'm happy that we were able to fully fund our budget, because we definitely need the money to ensure that all our kids are getting a quality education. In the future, would I recommend pulling from the healthcare fund? Absolutely not. What I will say is that this year is the first year that we've had a multi-year budget process. But what we're trying to do is we are, instead of deciding on the next school year what that budget will be, we're taking a different approach where we are going to look at implementing a 3-year process where we're thinking into the future. We're helping to create a better today by looking into the future. And what we're doing is we're able to better prioritize our funds to make certain that the things that need to be done in the school system, that we're able to look forward in doing what we need to do to provide a quality education for our students.
Okay. Mr. Amatetti?
We spend more money than any other country per student in the world. We have been spending more and more money at an increasing rate since 1970 every year, and we have fallen further and further behind. There are no rankings where we're in the top 20. We're sometimes down as far as 32. We're now taking money from our employees because we can't afford things, and now we're going to have Common Core, which will be an enormous expense and an enormous toll on teachers, so that we should pay them even more with that going on. So you can see we're always going to push our favorite programs, and we're always going to increase the cost. We're not going to ask the teachers who are successful in their classrooms what's making them successful, and doing that, which might be less expensive. I sound funny now, I don't know why. But with respect also to health care and pensions, on the pensions, I want to go to defined contributions, so the money doesn't go to Annapolis and it doesn't get used for who knows what, cleaning up the bay. Instead, it's kept by the teachers like a 401k, and they don't lose it. On the health care benefits, absolutely, we don't take away things that we've promised, but also as an operations auditor, I'm going to come in and I'm going to look at things like how the billings are done, how the coordinated care is doing. I'm going to compare contracts, and I'm going to constantly put the healthcare providers on notice that we're going to see if we can do better. So we're going to start reducing the healthcare costs by having somebody who understands how to negotiate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Eisner-Heidorn?
You can budget in 2-year cycles, 3-year cycles, 5-year cycles, but if nobody understands it, you can just be budgeting to the moon. And for all those people who think we managed to save ourselves from breaking MOE, to bring that money back from that cycle, we're going to raise MOE next year. So there's really nothing wrong with MOE. When the law was rewritten, it was done in order to encourage cooperation between the Board of Ed and the county council. So the finger pointing would stop leading up until the point where they make up and give the Board of Ed the money they need. What we need is that process to actually be working all the way through. And the way that works is through transparent budgets and metrics that assess what programs are working in a way that everybody has buy-in, because everybody needs to know what's working, why, and how. That's what's missing from this entire process. That's what we need. We need to start at the beginning with what programs are working, how are they working, what do they cost? Yes, there's a cost to the Common Core. There's a cost to teachers. There's a cost to administrators. There is a cost to everything. But if we don't know what it is on a school-by-school basis so that we can dovetail other services that this county provides, we can't fix it. And that's what we need to do. That's how we educate every child. That's what we're here for, every child.
Thank you. And just for clarification, MOE would be Maintenance of Effort, which is a state program that we're under. Okay. Ms. Ortman-Fouse.
So yes, maintenance of effort. The intention of maintenance of effort would be that it was supposed to be a floor, so that we would spend at least the same amount of money each year that we are given from the state the next year. And it was supposed to be so that counties, Montgomery County is pretty good about this, but some counties aren't, invested in education. But what it's ended up being is a ceiling, because what's happened is our county doesn't want to spend more any given year, because then they're locked into spending that much money, at least that much money the next year, and they don't know what the economy is going to do. So that's one thing about the maintenance of effort. Dr. Starr has said that he's open to making some changes or being agreeable to some changes being made to the maintenance of effort law, and I think this is something that we should look at. Regarding the budget, we do have half the budget of the county. That really is huge, $2.3 billion. About 16% of that budget is not direct instruction. We really haven't taken a good look system-wide at what's going on with the rest of that budget, and a lot of people have offered ideas around that. I'm not going to say this is what I'm going to do, because I'm a collaborator and I want to get on the other side of the door and work with people and see what they want to do too, but some of the ideas that have been put out there are auditing the departments, doing an internal audit, comprehensive internal audit. Also, it has been suggested perhaps to have an Office of Inspector General. Currently, the person who is the director of the budget has been working with the federal government for a long time. He's comfortable with that. Enterprise architects, there's lots of different ways we could do it to make sure that we're using our money strategically.
Thank you. Okay. Our next question will start with candidate Amatetti, and What role, if any, do you see charter schools playing in Montgomery County?
Good question. How many people think closing the achievement gap is an important thing to do? If you went to Cleveland and visited a school called Citizens Academy, and you found that 98.6% of them were from the Cleveland urban center, were African American, and in the worst places, and there are no places like it in DC when you go to these houses. When you find out that in their 12th year, they created a new achievement gap, they became the #1 school in Ohio, which meant all the white kids in the suburbs of Ohio had to start complaining that they couldn't send their kids to Citizens Academy. You can see what can happen. Charter school has a role. All people who have great ideas on making our education system better have a very important role. I've, as an educator, had an opportunity to visit more than 50 schools around the country, all performing at levels that are mind-boggling in conditions that are also mind-boggling. So I have charter schools are among many of the things that have a role. In DC, I think it's up to 45%. I think it's 45% of the students are now going to charter schools. Some of them are perfect for ESOL kids that speak Spanish. Some are perfect that are going into science programs, and on and on. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Eisner-Hydar?
I have a slightly different view, having served as the Maryland PTA Vice President of Legislation and having ensured that the Boast Bill didn't pass so that we didn't have vouchers. I believe that charters do have a place, but I'm not so sure that we in Montgomery County have found a really good one for them. I like some of the stuff that's going on in Loudoun County, where charters are being utilized to protect and preserve some local community schools that are in danger of being closed, where you're guaranteed admittance. I think that things that can be innovated at the local level can be done so within the school system. I think local flexibility within our schools is actually something we should be doing within the confines of our school system. So I'm not so sure that charters are a solution for us here. I'm open to learning about some interesting and innovative programs, and I know that there are areas where they can be good, but I'm not so sure that we who have an extraordinary and excellent school system, though we have a lot of learning to do to encourage and grow our school population, really have as much from the charters that we need to go much further with this.
Okay, Ms. Ortman-Fouse?
I agree with what Mary was saying about the charter schools in our county. We actually tried one charter school, Montessori school, and it's closing, as my understanding is it's closing at the end of this year. We do have an excellent school system in Montgomery County. We can do more with our system. The problem with charter schools is, first of all, the outcomes have been very mixed across the country, so it's sort of unpredictable. It's not really a panacea. It may answer some unique needs, as Mary mentioned. But I don't think we need to go there yet. One problem with charter schools can be that there is can be a profit motivation, and is that really how we want to do our schools, is put our public schools in the hand of people who want to make a profit off of our students. The second thing is how do we assess the students in the schools? How do we make sure that they are meeting the standards that we want them to meet, and how are we holding the schools accountable? That's critical if they're a part of our school system, and we need to make sure all that is in place before we go down that road. I'd also like to say that our public school teachers are working really hard, and I think if we all work together, we can better accomplish some of the tasks that are out there by implementing better strategy across the board, and then we won't need charter schools here in Montgomery County.
Thank you. Ms. Evans?
Thank you. So I too will say that we have a great public school system, and I'm a parent, and I think that we are our children's first advocates. And as a parent, I am open to a parent making the decision as to what is best for their student. With that being said, I do know that we have budgeted to fund a charter school. So we will have one in Montgomery County Public School System. And what I will also say is that if in fact we're going to have charter schools, that I would like for them to adhere to the same standards as our public school system, that we have quality teachers, in the charter schools, as well as they have contract agreements, as well as we are taking a close look as to the children that are performing and that they are high performing and that they engage and involve their parents as well. So I just want to say, as a parent, that I have open options. I'm open to parents having options for their children.
Okay, thank you. Most of us realize now that Montgomery County Public Schools is a majority-minority school district. We have many languages. We have many parents and children that speak different languages. What kind of approach would you take to help parents and children of speakers of other languages to help them adjust to Montgomery County Public Schools and succeed? Okay, and we're back to Ms. Eisner-Heidorn.
For starters, I have no idea why we wait so long to introduce language in our schools. And I don't understand why we don't bring ESL for adults into the elementary schools as well. I believe our elementary public schools should be the hub and spoke for all of our community services, that we have an opportunity to save county rents by using our elementary schools as service centers for our multilingual population, and we have opportunities. Little kids learn languages in ways that big kids don't. And the older you get, the dumber you get, though there is stuff we retain. It's called wisdom. Trust me, that's my excuse. But my kids were much more capable of learning things like, I mean, they still remember stuff that they saw from, Shin Shin on the cartoons and all that stuff. I mean, so why are we not capitalizing on this in the younger grades? And why are we not, I mean, we only have like these special immersions. Why are we not doing more of this? So what I would suggest we do is, for all of these kids coming from all these other countries, is we have all kinds of programs that share and in essence make kids feel really good about their immersion into our culture, that it's not an immersion, but that in essence it's a party, that they're coming and we're celebrating them being part of us and us welcoming them, that's how we celebrate education in Montgomery County.
Okay, Ms. Ortman-Fouse?
So I just want to dovetail on Mary's remarks there. For our immersion programs this year, 1,000 people applied for their kids, 275 were placed. So immersion programs are very, very popular. People want bilingual education from the earliest age possible in our county, and we need to answer that market because it serves our county well. It serves the kids well and serves the future of this county well, so I absolutely agree. As far as the achievement gap part of that with majority-minority schools, we have got to have a strategic plan in place. I do strategic planning for a living, and what we need to do is have an operational plan with measurable objectives of how we're going to reach these kids and these families and make sure they get to where we need them to go. We need objectives on a timeline and ways to assess where these kids are beyond standardized testing of math and reading. We also need to work collaboratively with all of our partners in our district, because this doesn't just exist in our schools. Education doesn't just exist in the classroom. So we need to make sure that we are working collaboratively with our county council, and our state on the solutions for the achievement gap. I want to say we've got a couple of programs that are working, like Linkages to Learning in our public school system, and this connects the community to the school, which is really important. We need to look at wraparound services for our families and public support and safety net for our families, because if families don't have affordable housing, if they don't have steady employment, if they have food insecurity, the aperture for learning in those households narrows. There's a lot more to say about that.
Ms. Evans, you can have her turn.
Engage, educate, excel. What I will say is that I happen to live in a community where the poverty level is very high and where English is not the first language of a lot of the families. And what they want is the same thing that we want. They want a quality education for their students. They want it to be included in the process. And most of the time, that inclusion just means asking them asking them, what kind of supports do you need in place? But also with the engagement part of my Engage, Educate, Excel, that's engaging our community in support of our students and in support of our schools. That's expanding our community partnerships. That's making certain that the businesses in the local community, our families, our community members, that they are involved. Because once our families know that our community has a vested interest in their children, it encourages them to be engaged and involved more in the process. That we have to be creative in how we're reaching out to our parents. And I think Mary said it, to make our schools community hubs, to let them know that it's okay for them to come into community, that we're here to support them. They have access, we have resources, and we are here and ready and available and able to help all of our families.
Thank you. Mr. Amatetti?
I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record, and you're again going to hear me contrast big top-down type of programs versus what's really happening where the rubber hits the road, and this is from a personal standpoint. When I came from Prince George's, I came to Montgomery, and I demanded that I get one of the 3 lowest performing schools, because in Montgomery County, they're just so far higher than Prince George's, it would be a culture shock in most schools for me to start teaching there. I ended up at Loiterman, which has a huge Hispanic population. That's where I got 14 kids from El Salvador, and Italy played El Salvador in a soccer game, and we kicked, because I was on the Italy team. I walked in on huge ESOL classes there. I walked in on the class and saw what the kids were doing and went right to the principal and demanded it. Every one of my ESOL kids were in my classroom, and they were sitting next to a bilingual student, and we had bilingual tests, and we even had some bilingual classrooms. They took their tests in Spanish through November. By January, Spanish and English. By the end of the year, they were doing tests in English and had to do presentations in English. This difference between my students and the ones in the ESOL students were staggering. And I know I'm running out of time. By the end, I had a tutoring program where English students were teaching English to Spanish kids in the ESOL class after school. They need to be immersed so they can start socializing, because guess what? They're going to be living in America, and they're going to be living with Americans. Sorry, I went over.
Okay. All right. There's been talk around about creativity with the school day, the school year, school hours. It's been the same for a long, long time, since the farm days, basically. Do you have any ideas about adjusting a school day or a school year, or you're satisfied leaving it as is? So we'll start with Ms. Ortman-Fouse.
Okay, this is really Mary's issue, so she's
Okay, well, she'll get it at the end.
So just from the very start of this with the school starting later issue, homework wasn't done like they did in Virginia. We didn't look at the transportation issues that would come up. We didn't look at the costs. So now, even though Dr. Starr has said that he was supportive of it, now he's saying, well, we might not have enough money to do it. And a lot of money, time, and resources was spent on surveying the community around later start times. The research shows that it is more in line with teenagers' sleep patterns to start school later, because their body clocks stay up later and they get up later. The problem is that the way the schedule was proposed and the way these two issues were linked together, as Mary said earlier, is a half hour was added on to the end of the elementary school day, and it could not be decoupled from the idea of starting high school later. This is a problem for a lot of parents to start school at the same time for elementary school students, and then, to add the half hour to the end of the day when kids are tired, when they already have after school programs, when it starts to get dark, and it reduces family time. This is a big deal. So if anything, add it to the front of the day. And if you do add this half hour, it cannot be instructional time. It has to be time for electives or physical education, because those are the things that we don't have that other counties around us have, that we don't have enough minutes of. Our teachers need more planning time, and that extra half hour could be used for that.
Thank you. Ms. Evans?
Yes. So I will say this, we are very committed to having healthy kids Their well-being is our first priority. And I have an elementary school student, but as a Board of Education member, I would think about all of the students. So in thinking, if we are to end school later for the elementary school kids, I'm gonna have to agree with Jill that my thinking, or what I would prefer, is that we have more opportunities for our teachers to plan, as well as giving our children more access to the arts. We do know that the arts play a very huge role in our kids' learning, and that's what I want to say.
Okay. Mr. Amatetti?
Thank you. I'm not completely settled on the issue, but I will say some things that I do know. High school students do better when they sleep later. That's a fact now. We know that. And the problem is it's going to mean more cost, transportation, overhead, et cetera, and it could mean some inconveniences for elementary school students. I'm hearing concerns from parents about the elementary school students, and they're the customers. I will say I don't agree with the parents. It's very funny because longer days have been a very big key to success for schools around the country when the kids stay later taking added instruction. So I will kind of quietly argue the other side, and I understand the parents are the customers, but you will find your students are going to be doing better. We can also study other possible solutions like a 4-day week. In Colorado, 17 districts have a 4-day week, and they've seen an increase in performance at the high school level. And we've got to start getting our hands around the opportunities of technology and virtual learning that might lead to even more flexibility at the high school level and maybe less impact on elementary school students, so we can push back for the high school kids. And that's primarily, we need to study it, because the more I look into it, I realize we're going to be going into a lot of new ground, and so that will be exciting, and I want to work with the board in doing that properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Eisner-Heidorn?
Hi. So, the legislative director of Start School Later, biased as I am, speaks. As successfully implemented in 41 states across the country, with or without 30 minutes in the elementary school day. The first 2 tiers are the little kids, because if you have little kids, you know they bounce out of bed, wide awake, ready to learn, because they're little kids. And then somewhere, I don't know, was it 11, 12? Who remembers that exact age? When they start getting a little sluggish, and by, I don't know, my kid's age, once school ends, I swear, one of my kids becomes a bat. You know, he could stay up all night and sleep all day. It's amazing. So I'm also on the math assessment work group, and half of the tests are given at 7:25, and we wonder why they fail. So yeah, it's pretty clear that we should and could do a lot better against our kids if we align schedules to when the kids are awake. And when they started that tiering, and they changed schools from 9 to 3 to 4 tiers, they didn't ask any of us what we thought. So this fight to change the schedules back is kind of crazy as far as I'm concerned, because we're fighting to actually deliver school when kids are awake. And that's really what this is all about. Do the teachers need the planning time? Yes. Could the kids benefit from school when they're awake? Absolutely. One more thing, we should be going to school year-round, guys. Summer camp, why are we paying for summer camp?
Okay, thank you very much. We've been talking about curriculum and students and things, but it all happens in a physical building, base physical building. Montgomery County's public schools, especially down county, have some older buildings with problems. Do you see, what do you see as solutions to that? Because some of them are on long waiting lists, but the problem is immediate. So, Ms. Ortman-Fouse?
So the first place we need to start is to get our fair share of the state funds. We have 17% of the students here in Montgomery County, and we get 12% of the construction funding from the state. And to do that strategy, we need to start with the governor the 2 days after he or she is elected and work with the leadership in Annapolis and figure out our strategy to make that happen. A lot of folks were upset because Baltimore pulled it off and we were not able to get that additional funding this year. We got a little bit, $5 million, but we needed a lot more. But Baltimore also spent years putting that together. And now that we've had some time to work on it, I think that folks are ready to go. I presented testimony before House Appropriations on this very issue in Annapolis, and I feel like we can make a better case this time. So that's where I want to start. Secondly, as far as school construction here in the county, we need to do a better job of cooperating with our county planners and our municipalities and developers. I've talked to folks at all levels, and developers have set aside land for schools that if we don't use, we lose. We have buildings that MCPS is leasing to other agencies that we could take back and use for school space. We also have problems with our municipalities in that they have adequate facilities ordinances that are different from adequate facilities policy for the school system, and that creates issues. So I have to stop.
Ms. Evans?
So as I said earlier, we do not have the right to remain silent. That what we will need is we will need input from our community. We will need everybody to take part and make certain that they're coming out and speaking out on behalf of our schools and our students to make certain that we do get that fair share so that we can be able to build our schools. Safe learning environments have an effect on whether or not our children receive a quality education. Now, I will say that I did serve on the Down County Capacity Study Committee. And what we were doing, we're taking a lot of things into consideration. Our children attend a school that 2 years ago had a 16-wing addition built on, and right now we have 5 portables on the grounds. And what that capacity study is doing is looking to see whether or not we need to be open to see whether or not we need to change our boundaries, to see whether or not the schools that are under capacity could get the children in the schools that are over capacity moved over to those underused schools, or to consider building a new elementary school. I think that what we need to do is to continue to get community input, make certain that we're taking a very close look and study at how our schools are being utilized, and go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Amatetti?
We have a serious issue that's growing worse and worse by the day with overcapacity and aging, so we've got to do some things, and I agree with Jill that we need to fight for our fair share. We can't afford it no longer to pay for everybody else, but not our own county, so I agree with that. I also want to say this is an opportunity to look at how we construct our schools and build out our schools from the very beginning up and from the ground floor. We spend way too much per square foot on schools. Other jurisdictions are doing it at 30 to 40% less, and that's a lot of schools that we can build. So I want to do that. I even want to look at prefab. You guys can Google it. Often they're made of metal, and when you see a picture of it, you can't even tell. And I want to see what we can do to start building out schools much less expensively. With respect to portables, we have 11,000 students, and a lot of them are elementary school. And I asked my wife permission before I could say this today, but if we don't start getting rid of these portables, I'm going to find a portable that we're not using, and I'm going to put it in the parking lot of the Board of Ed. And if I'm elected to the Board of Ed, I'm going to work in that portable until we start getting rid of it. You can see why I had to ask permission from my wife. She thinks I'm crazy enough as it is. So we just need to do better in how we do it. And this is a great opportunity to focus our attention on it. Thanks.
Ms. Eisner-Hyder?
We all agree we need to do better with Annapolis. As much as I supported the fact that they chose to focus on transportation dollars over construction dollars the year before last, I think they should have gone for both. I think they could have gone for both and achieved both. In addition, I think we need to be thinking outside the box with the way we use our construction dollars in this county. We need to look at how we build our buildings. We need to look at allocation of those dollars in general funds, focusing on HVAC, focusing on technology, focusing on things that benefit students across the system as opposed to individual buildings. We need to look at and not be scared of boundary changes, because it is essential that we allocate students. And by the way, if this costs me the election, I don't care, guys. It is time to start thinking outside the box, if that's what it takes to put kids into schools. This is important. We not only need to get angry about not getting our fair share, but kids learn better inside buildings that actually work, and that's what's needed. So I'm angry and frustrated by what's going on, by not knowing how we're allocating dollars. This is what it's going to mean to get kids inside buildings. And it's not just in the down county that schools aren't being built. Potomac hasn't been touched. Once you touch a building, and we need to set standards. We went to the policy CNE conversation. We talked about the fact that you get an addition, it's different than getting a modernization, and then they don't touch you for 30 years. These are problems.
Okay, thank you. All right. And special education is always a very important topic for the education, the Board of Education, teachers, parents. If you could change or do one thing to change the outcome and help special education students, what would it be? Ms. Evans?
If I can do one thing or make a change, what would that change be? What I would do, I would just want, I think that every child is important in our school system, and you always want to ensure that everybody has access to the resources that they have. So if I could change one thing, I wish we had enough money just to make certain that whatever we need to do, that we could do those things. It's just really important that all of our kids are prepared for the future, whether it's college or a career, and whether you have special needs or not. If adequately prepared, you can do the things, you can do whatever you set your mind to doing. So if I had a say, I would make certain that we're able to provide all the resources that we need to our special needs students. I know that it costs a great deal of money. I know that we only have so much money to do only but so much, but I wish that it would never be a question as to what we can do, but just doing it.
Okay, Mr. Amatetti?
It's going to be hard in a minute and a half, but first thing is, I'll again sound a little bit like a broken record, but I also brought a lot of special ed kids into my regular class. And I guess I'll tell a story that I've met with one of the Board of Education members right now, and she has a special ed kid. And I said, well, I tried to get as many of the special eds out of the special ed kid classes and into my class, and they flourished. She said, well, you know, they come in different shapes and sizes, and my kid is really can't do that. And okay, well, it turned out before our meeting was over, the kid came gliding up on his skateboard and started talking to us. And I said, oh, he would have kicked in my class. He was nothing close to being somebody who couldn't be mainstreamed. I do understand not every parent wants their kid mainstreamed. My other thing is there's a big deal about burden of proof, shifting the burden of proof. I'm not going to get into it. It's too complicated. I'll go way over a minute and a half. But I will say, whatever we do with the burden of proof, that's not the solution. The solution is ending this adversarial relationship between the school and the kids, and having the lawyers and the administrators all talking it out, and having the teachers, some of them were marvelously successful with these kids, not at all involved, having the parent not at all involved. The solution is going to be when the parent and the teachers and the administrators are getting together and working with the student. Very quickly, so much of my success that I keep talking about and other teachers' success is because I made between 150 and 500 phone calls home every year to parents, depending on the thing, and I'll stop.
Thank you. Ms. Eisner-Heidorn?
One thing. Okay, so I would shift the burden of proof. I would shift the burden of proof because I believe it's incumbent upon the school system that is responsible for educating the children to own that responsibility and work with the parents as opposed to assume it's an adversarial role. So that's one thing. Secondly, I would work very hard to not look at adequate in FAPE, that is the adequate free education that is owed a child, and instead ensure that we look at every child, because I believe this is true for our GAP children. Every child that comes into our school system, we meet them where they come to us, and we take them wherever they can possibly go. We don't look at them and see them as they are. We look at them and see them for the potential for who they can be. There is no such thing as adequate for any child. There is only the wonderfulness that they can become. And so that's what I would like for us not to be thinking of when we see a special needs child. And that's part of why I think we have set up with these IEPs an adversarial, uncomfortable position. What we should be looking at in an IEP meeting is, what can we be doing for these children? How can we be helping them? Because in our heterogeneous classrooms, when we're failing one child, we're failing a class. So if we don't make sure that we're expecting the best from all of them, and then they are expecting and owning the best for themselves, that's how we're all going to win.
Thank you.
So I'm
Ms.
just gonna start by-
Ortman-Fouse?
Okay,
Go
I'm just
ahead.
going to start by explaining a few things that Mary mentioned. She mentioned the state or the federal law that basically, just very simply, it's that we are required by law to meet the needs of all of our kids, special needs or not, and if we can't do it, then it's incumbent upon us to make sure that our school system, that those kids get their needs met somewhere else. It could be outside the school system. The burden of proof is that currently the burden of proof is on parents for IEPs, which she mentioned, or individualized educational plans for students who have special learning needs. I am for shifting the burden of proof to the school system, and I lobbied our legislators for that this year and attended hearings on that as well. Right now, the burden of proof is about proving that the school system is not adequately meeting the needs of your child. The school system has all the information. The parents don't have the information. So it's really incumbent. It makes more sense for it to be on for the burden to be on the school system to be able to explain how they're meeting that need and proving it first. Especially when we have ESOL students and low-income students in our school system who can't afford the lawyers or can't read the documentation to understand if their kids' needs are being met. I've talked to parents in our system who the special ed the system has worked for their kids, and it's because the parents and principals and staff were partners in the education of the child. When that breaks down is when we have the trouble.
Okay, thank you. We have received quite a few questions on the relationship between the school board and the teachers union. And so we'd like to hear a little bit about what you think that relationship is and how you will work with the teachers union if you are elected. So, Mr. Amatetti?
The teachers union and the teachers are a very important constituency, so I will work very closely with them. The purpose of the board is to serve the parents, the students, and the citizens of Montgomery County, the taxpayers. And so those are also going to be very important in anything I do. The teachers union has a place. It's protecting their membership, which is protecting the rights of teachers and et cetera, et cetera. And where that comes into conflict with what I think it makes a better school system, I'll be working with them, but I won't be giving in to them. Secondly, there's a lot of ideas I have with respect to clearing the bureaucracy from teachers, which is why I've come so strongly against Common Core and against some other things that we didn't talk about, is to limit the burden, to reduce the burden of teachers and make them more effective and train better so they do better in the classrooms. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity where I'm going to get together with the unions and say, you should be fighting for this. And if I have certain other questions come up, I can talk about it. But again, classroom management is so important. It is 50 to 70% of the teacher's the teacher's success. It's never ever trained. It's not part of the training. Everything else is, and Common Core will now be a new one.
Thank you. Ms. Eisner Heidorn.
Some of my favorite people are teachers. They really are. You can't run for the Board of Ed without recognizing there's a teachers union. Actually, in Montgomery County, you can't run for anything without recognizing there's a teachers union. Anybody ever seen this big red apple ballot? Yeah, well, by the way, if you decide to run for the Board of Ed at the last minute and they don't even realize you're going to run, don't be surprised. I don't really have a problem with the teachers union. I think they're great. I know the guys that run it. I know the woman who's the political director. I believe in a big tent. I believe there's also voters in Montgomery County. I believe there's other unions. I believe there's lots of stakeholders that impact the life of a child. And as important as they are, and as much as I fully expect them to work and ensure and protect the teachers in this county, I would expect everyone's voice to be heard. And actually, I would expect that they would benefit if the budget was transparent. They would benefit if there were substantial metrics, and that they would benefit with the kinds of things that I'm talking about. Because in essence, then they would see how we were all doing. It doesn't hurt them if there are more voices heard in this process. In fact, I think we all win.
Ms. Ortman-Fouse.
So we were all interviewed by these unions, and I had to be honest with them in all cases. And sometimes we were asked, will you put our contract first? And my answer was, I'm always going to put the kids first. And sometimes, what the unions want is definitely in agreement with the students' need. But I can say that the teachers' union doesn't always represent all teachers. It represents the sampling of teachers that are the faculty reps at the schools. And I have teachers who are supporting me, and I'm very happy to have their help and support. If you talk to any of the teachers in the schools where my children have attended, you will know that I am loyal to our teachers. Our teachers want things beyond salary and pension. They want things that are helpful in the classroom, that help their morale. They want strong principals. They want their curriculum more than 2 weeks away from when they're supposed to teach it. And those are the kinds of things that I am very supportive of. Also, our teachers union is one union. I am a union supporter, but our county union, county employees union, is another union. That represents our librarians and our bus drivers, and we represent our firefighters and our police officers and healthcare workers, and these all play a very important role in our children's lives. And I think teachers realize that, and we have to balance all these interests when we get around the table, because every time we look at the life of a child, we have to, and make a decision for that child, we have to look at all policy. It's how is this going to affect the child?
Thank you. And speaking of the child, it's nice to see in the audience we do have a few children, and I think it's very important that we start and have them listen to what the school board candidates say. So I applaud the parents of the students that are here today. Ms. Evans.
I want to start off by saying I am a relationship builder. I'm a connector. And I think that having a collaborative spirit definitely helps when it comes to making decisions, especially the ones that are impacting our education. The teachers are they're the cornerstone of our education system. With that being said, I do happen to have the endorsement of the teachers, and I'm very proud of that. starting off, like I said, working with our children's school, our teachers, I definitely want to be able to help lighten their load. And I think that it's important that the agreement that we currently have with the teachers union, that is interest-based. We're all coming to the table, we're all bringing together, we're all coming together to talk about our interests that we mutually agree on. And I will continue to work very closely with our teachers, ensuring that we are making certain that we have what's the best for our students. And because I have worked with some of them in the past, I think that it will make it easier going forward to be on the school board. Having that, that relationship makes it easier when it comes time to have those disagreements. With that respect in place, we all are listening, we're very open, and so I'm looking forward to being able to be one of those people that could possibly be working with our teachers in the future.
Thank you. We are now ready for closing statements. Each candidate will have 1 minute. We did draw names, and amazingly, it came out in alphabetical order, so I should get this one right if we're lucky. Mr. Amatetti, will you start with your closing statement?
My closing statement kept changing as the evening went. I want to bring up something. The #1 hotel chain in the world is Marriott Corporation, and they put an army of people out. And what do? An army of people go to every one of their hotels and they start watching what the different people do in their hotels, where they sit, where they get a drink, how much they rest, do they get in the lounge chair, and they keep tweaking. They're looking at the customers. Everything that I was answering in my answers was what happens where the teacher and the student and the parent intersect. Is it helping? Is it hurting? What do we need to do? I may not be the perfect Board of Education person, but I will be kind of diversity on the board because no one else is going to have that perspective. They're going to have great answers from a top level. I'm going to be sitting there and say, no, you need to tweak it like this. I know what the best teachers do. I know what the struggling teachers are struggling about. And that's why I'm hoping I can get onto the board. Thank you very much. And thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Evans?
I wanted to first start off by thanking the League of Women Voters again for having this community forum tonight. And if I had to guess, each of you are here this evening because you care deeply about our community, because you care about our students and you care about our schools, and you've come here tonight to see if I care as much as you do. And I do. I have answered the call to action. I have been involved in our community for the past 6 years, advocating for all 151,000 plus students in our county. And I've also been recently tagged to be the co-facilitator of a group that's having a critical conversation around closing the achievement gap. It's very important that all of our students have access to a quality education and that they have equal opportunities. And so I ask each of you today, on June 24th, to go to the voting polls and to support me, Shebra Evans, for your at-large candidate for the school board.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have Ms. Eisner-Heidorn.
On June 12th, right, sorry. On June 24th, 1998, my twin sons were born. They were due on August 24th, so my first challenge as a parent was navigating a month in a NICU and then bringing 4-pound preemie infants home. Major takeaway, as Hillary Clinton said, it takes a village. This is my village, Montgomery County. There are so many people, too countless to name, who have helped my boys grow to be the amazing young men they are. There are doctors and nurses. There are teachers and paraeducators and principals and counselors and staff support folks and curriculum writers and administrators. There are folks who work in our school system, in our libraries, in government agencies and nonprofits, all who made a difference. So on June 24th, 2014, as my boys turn 16, give me a chance to give back to this village. I commit to giving you all that they have received and more.
Thank you. Ms. Ortman-Fouse?
So what do we all want from our community? We want a thriving school system that meets the needs of every child and works well with every community. We have increasing challenges in our school system. We have an achievement gap that's getting bigger when it should be shrinking. We're missing valuable learning opportunities with our children beyond math and reading. And we have facilities issues that aren't keeping up with our changing demographics in our county. I've built coalitions from the ground up to address school concerns as well as community issues beyond schools. I've worked on safety, planning, and local infrastructure issues. I've also lobbied for state-level policies that affect our kids. Through these efforts, I've developed strong relationships and learned that together we can have a major impact. We have an amazing combination of resources here in this county, people who are knowledgeable, creative, and want to make a difference. And by being responsive to and collaborating with our constituents, we could be a model for the entire country, and I want you to help me do that. And I hope you join my team.
Thank you. And on behalf of AAUW and the League of Women Voters of Montgomery County, I'd like to thank the candidates. I'd like to thank the audience. You were wonderful. Your questions were excellent. And I hope you will spread the word that this will be streamed and it will be shown again on MCM. If you'll check the schedule, their website, I'm sure the schedule will be on it. And spread the word, and don't forget to vote on June 24th. You now have a much better understanding of the candidates, and again, we appreciate everything that you've come and done. So, thank you.